Hello there, welcome to this second channel video. This is going to be a little bit less than you're used to. I'm out of breath, I don't know, I think it's because I've just walked up like 5 steps. So I recently received some first edition books. This one, Cell by Stephen King, Walls of the Calla, Song of Susanna and the Dark Tower, which are part of the Dark Tower series. I was arranging my new bookshelf. I've got a bookshelf, you see, and it's exciting. It's exciting to me. It might be exciting to you, I don't know, that's why we're here, isn't it? If you're here, you've probably seen the title and thought, I like books too. If not, that's why it's on the second channel. For those of you who just don't give a shit. Let's talk about books. Now, a lot of them, as you can see, are Stephen King, and I'm going to do a top 5 Stephen King novels, my top 5, not the top 5, in the next video that will go up on this channel whenever I get around to editing it. But today we're going to do my top 5 books ever. It's almost all genre fiction. I basically only ever read genre fiction. We sort of touched on this before because I like the escapism of a book. Like a child, I need a storybook. Now I do have physical copies of all of these books, but I don't have them with me because they're in storage until me and Emma move again. It's a shame, but I wanted to do this video now instead of just waiting for like 8 months before me and Emma move again. In at number 5 is Watchers by Dean Koontz. I've not read a lot of Dean Koontz in my slightly older years, but as a teenager he was a really big part of my reading life because I found him really, like, he's quite easy to read. It's not like, there's nothing taxing there. The first book I read by him was Watchers. Because of that, it holds a pretty special place in my heart. It was actually one of the first books I think I read that sort of set me on the path of genre fiction, and I enjoyed it so much because it was so far-fetched. It had these wild plot devices and it just destroyed me. I love it. I love it when stuff goes insane. It's why I enjoy Repairman Jack, the Repairman Jack series by F. Paul Wilson. Quick summary, the story is dude driving a truck in America. He drives it out one day and just finds this dog, a little golden retriever, and this dog is super intelligent, like far too intelligent for a dog. He names him Einstein. Then shit goes wrong. A hitman comes after him. It's a spoiler to tell you what it is, but this other thing comes after him that's super intelligent as well. It sounds like a crazy book, and it is a bit, but it's just so like, it was such a great little story. It set me off on genre fiction because I lost myself completely in that book. That has to be in my top 5 just because I think it did a lot to inspire me to read more, and did a lot to inspire me to read more genre fiction. In at number 4, only just finished this one, A Song of Ice and Fire. I don't understand how George R.R. Martin wrote those books. I honestly believe he is some sort of other being. He's not human. There is no fucking way a human being wrote those books. It's far too complex. My other theory is that he's some sort of god, or maybe our god, and he created like our Earth, got bored, wrote these books. I just don't understand. I don't understand it. It's so good, but it is difficult. Like, it's quite difficult to read. For like genre fiction, for like just a little tale to be told of old worldy stuff, there's so many characters. It takes a while to really sort of understand and get into it, but it's just, I love it so much. I do enjoy fantasy, and I really enjoyed Lord of the Rings, although it's not in my top 5. It's that same kind of thing though, where this whole world is created with just language and politics and just backstory and backstory and backstory. You've all seen The Programme. It's like that times a million. Like, I was just sat around reading those books just constantly until it was done. Like, Emma was like, can we watch TV please? And I was like, no, I'm reading this book. Can we eat please? No, I'm reading this book. And again, it ticks that escapism thing for me because I was gone. It feels so real to read those books. It's insane. They're so good. It's not even finished. So, A Song of Ice and Fire, I am combining series into one. Like, I don't know anything about writing or books or anything. These are just my weird little opinions. This is how I review stuff. It's just super subjective. I've got no objectivity whatsoever. Number 3, I have one. I have finally one there. Finally have a physical one. Is this? It's not genre fiction. It's Heavier Than Heaven, a biography of Kurt Cobain by Charles R. Cross. This book kind of messed me up. I've touched on before how I was just psychopathic as a teenager. I was an insane person. In my later years, of my teenage years, I was just a crazy person. I read the biography of Kurt Cobain and I found a lot of similarities between myself and him. I mean, I know it was Charles R. Cross, but it really feels like he's channeling exactly how Kurt would have felt, I guess. I mean, who knows? It seems like it's a decent, objective biography. It did a bunch towards like helping me understand my own brain. So like, once you have that perspective, if you're a crazy teenager, like for whatever reason, once you have that perspective on yourself, once you finally are able to take a step back and go, okay, that's what the hell's going on with me. That's your first step. And this book was my first step, really. I think that was one of those things where it was just like, oh, okay, so that's what was going on with him. We're pretty similar. Right, okay, so that's what he did wrong. I won't do it. I love Nirvana now. They're probably my second favourite band ever. Numero 2, I have this one. The Dark Tower by Stephen King. This is the baby. Look at that. This is my first edition copy that I just managed to get hold of. It's so beautiful. Look at all of these. It's got all these illustrations. This is a whole series again, very similar to Song of Ice and Fire. It starts with this one. This is the first book. There's 8 books, I think, in the series, beginning with the Gunslinger and ending with the Dark Tower. I don't even know how I'm going to explain this in sort of a quick summary nutshell way, because the books are ridiculous. Like, they're insane. It's similar to George R. R. Martin. I don't think they're quite as complex or as well thought out as George did, but again, George is some sort of otherworldly being and doesn't count. But they are super complex. He's created this entire world, and you really get behind the characters. There are a handful of characters that you follow throughout the entire series, and you seriously get behind them. And the main character, Roland, really, he's awesome. He's awesome. He's like Jack Bauer level of awesome, and I always love a protagonist who's just too good. Like, Jack Bauer was basically immortal. He was just too good at everything. He was good at everything, and I like that. I don't like flawed characters. I actually like it when characters are ridiculously overpowered, and Roland is that character. I mean, as a summary for the Dark Tower, it's just about this one guy, Roland, who's out to kind of save the world. Not just the world, but all worlds. There's like this apex of the multiverse, I guess, called the Dark Tower, and there's like an evil force trying to destroy it, is the general kind of gist of it. And he's like the last person who can save it. He's kind of like a cowboy. He's very Clint Eastwood, man with no name kind of guy. He's basically that character. It deals with so much insanity. Like, there's sort of time travel, there's parallel worlds, there's ridiculous monsters. It's a crazy book, and I fucking love it so much I can't even begin to describe. Not only that, but Stephen King links so many of his other books into things that happen because of the events of the Dark Tower. I don't know how to explain that. I don't know how to even explain that to you, but there's all these interlinking things. Like, there'll be characters from, say, Salem's Lot that show up in the Dark Tower and just join Roland and his quartet, his little team. I can't deal with it. I love Stephen King, and that's a big reason as to why. And that's why I'm going to do an entire separate video on Stephen King. The Dark Tower is such a huge undertaking. There's loads of books, and to truly, honestly read The Dark Tower, you have to read almost everything by Stephen King. It's perfect for me because I want that escapism. I want to read forever. Number 1. Now, we've touched on this, The Dice Man. I basically covered this in a main channel video on my favourites of just other things, all the things. This is just a little story about a psychiatrist who decides to live his life by the dice, a little bit like Yes Man. So he puts on options onto a dice, rolls the dice, and depending on what the number is, depends on which option he chooses, and then he follows that through no matter what. There is a psychology to it. It does feel like a real psychologist wrote this. I have absolutely no idea if Luke Reinhardt is I don't know what he is. And in there, he is treating his patients, and after a little while, after living his life by the dice, he starts to treat his patients with a thing called dice therapy. He gets a dice, and he says, you know, you're feeling out of control, you've got issues here, there, everywhere, anxiety, rage, depression. You start putting options onto a dice, and it sort of waylays that feeling, pushes the blame off of yourself and onto this inanimate little object. For me, as someone who was very indecisive and didn't really know what to do and where to go or like what path to follow, putting the options onto that, it helped me make those decisions. It made me into a more decisive person because I'd put that pressure that I felt on my own indecisiveness onto this dice was gone. There was no pressure anymore because it wasn't my fault that I did whatever it was that I did, whether it was a good thing or a crazy thing. And it just sort of conditions your brain a little bit into thinking that way. I'm not saying start up with dice therapy. I'm not saying it's a good idea because it could you could just end up like him, like he's like on the run and stuff like throughout this book. He's like a fucking criminal by the end of it. And that is totally where you'd end up if you properly follow dice therapy. Like, don't ever follow it completely. It has to be and always will be number 1 for me, The Dice Man. Well, there you go, a weird top 5, my top 5 books, fairly revealing. Take from that what you will. I don't care. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I mentioned. Let me know if you enjoyed them or didn't enjoy them. Or maybe just let me know what your favourite book is or books. Or if you think there's anything that I would enjoy. So, I will see you next time.